One of the things that I think about when it comes to the two-stroke engines, how not to die and how not jump off a cliff is definitely don't develop any skills beyond one unidisciplinary path. If you only become good at one thing, that's absolutely going to be following the lemmings, jumping off of the cliff. So don't do that. I've developed several abilities. One of those is copywriting salesmanship through written word, which is a bit different than salesmanship through in-person influence, or like this, a video influence, which is sort of a mesh between the two. Written word copywriting is an art form. It's advertising, is what it is. If you read advertisements in the newspaper and you see people trying to sell you things, believe it or not, a lot of business in the economy is generated from those advertisements, and it really does make a big difference on people's decision-making behavior in terms of where they put their dollars, what they've earned. Not only am I pretty doggone great at advertising, I'm also pretty doggone great at writing big long topics too. I plan on probably publishing more than a dozen books over my life. Not all at once. Probably several years break in between. One of those books could be about the future of artificial intelligence, the future of the fact that things are rapidly becoming cheaper, faster, more economical. There's two exponentials. You don't just have one exponential, and Elon's talked about this. You have two exponentials. You have the exponential development of technology, all the STEM fields all working in that direction. You also have the exponential curve of everything becoming cheaper to produce because of other advancements in the technology of manufacturing. So the resource acquisition is becoming cheaper, faster, and easier. The resource remanagement, manufacturing is becoming cheaper, faster, and easier. And artificial is this gigantic, humongous monstrosity that we choose to ignore most of the time. It has a lot of really significant impact, and it's going to replace pretty much everything we do. If you think about the 22nd century or the 23rd century, most humans, right now, and Elon's quoted this in another video, right now, roughly a third of all employment on Earth is some form of transportation. People that are, like me, delivering food, people that are driving taxis or Ubers, people that are driving buses, school bus drivers, and the people that fly the airplanes, those pilots, and the pilots, the captains of the ships, and all across the world. All these forms of transportation make up roughly a third. Train operators, you name it. Yeah, the subway system, all those people that operate and produce jobs, because you think there's a whole lot more jobs that go into running these. Well, it all has to do with transportation. And when all of transportation is replaced, what are people going to do? Underground aquaponics could replace what people spend their time with if every house was built with 2 basement levels. That's the proposition, and it is a little bit far-fetched, but it's just one idea I'd like to roll with right now. Maybe you'll hear about it in another video later on. But let's say in underground aquaponics, every new construction house is built with 2 basements. They dig it double deep these days. That's just the standard. And it's becoming more and more economical to actually add a secondary basement by just leaving one little portion as it is. You know, if your basement is so many square foot, you leave one little corner, one little edge, and then dig down the rest of the base. It works great. It's really quite economical because they go one bit at a time. It's all systematized. It's all systematic. Underground aquaponics could be the future. It's incredible. Another great thing is the biome. You've got to think about what's alive that you're not currently aware of. There are things like mold, which really impact humans' ability to function in the real world. There are things like pheromones, and there are things like fragrances and scents that come from candles and scents that come from other living organisms. There are lots of studies about sex pheromones in cockroaches and sex pheromones in moths. And it's really interesting to me because I'm a fan of Napoleon Hill philosophy. And in the 10th step towards riches is sex transmutation. He explains this transmutation of sex energy is sort of like Kundalini yoga, where all of this base energy from your lower chakras is being uplifted through your upper chakras. That sex energy should be used primarily non-physically, because most people think of sex as being a physical thing only. But actually, I think of sex physically as like a secondary attachment. I think most of sex should be non-physical, in a matter of speaking. Underground aquaponics, you've got this basement boring mechanism that's really economical, and people can get themselves a second basement. What's the big deal with that? Why do they want a second basement? The biome. Just because you're unaware doesn't mean it isn't there. Just because you're unaware doesn't mean it isn't there. There are, let me pause the video. There are other parts of the life forms on Earth. If you look at the whole kingdom of all life on Earth, there are multiple kingdoms, not just the animal kingdom and not just the plant kingdom. I'm pretty sure there's 3 more. If you want to look it up on your own, pause the video. Those other life forms are really, really small. Bacteria is invisible to the human eye, but they live in our bodies, on our bodies. There's bacteria all over the place, and they live on our clothes and on our couches and on our beds and on our carpets, on our everything we own. There are these little tiny microorganisms that are alive. Just because you're unaware doesn't mean it isn't there. They're there all the time. So the idea with this underground aquaponics is that it would produce a great biome. The fish poop is actually a really great biome. The aquaponics, the hydroponics, if you look up hydroponics, that's going to lead you to this water system where you can grow plants in your house through a water system. Aquaponics is a step and beyond, because with aquaponics, you've got fish that are living in this pool, and you have to feed them. So you go and you feed your fish every day, and all of the water that the fish are swimming in is the same water that you're using to water your plants. And the idea is the fish poop keeps lots of high nitrogen that's good for the plants. Not too high, but at an optimal level that keeps the plants flourishing. Certain types of plants you can pick and they'll never run out. They'll keep producing fruit and vegetable on the same vine. It's really, really cool. it's sort of like a vegan paradise. You could imagine somebody who's all plant based, and they only have meat once a year or whatever. All of their food, 100% of it, could be produced underground. You could spend 10 years of your life never walking into a grocery store and buying food because 100% of your food could be grown in your second basement. Tell me that's not cool. That's really doggone cool. You know it is. Underground aquaponics, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So the second idea, which I'm building on, is that the biome produced from those plants are producing fresh oxygen. So you could imagine like walking into a hospital. They have all this fancy air filters. They have HEPA filters and UV lights that kill all these germs and all these bacteria and whatnot. And it gives you this really clean air. So if you walk into a hospital, you can tell it's like a clean, sterile environment. And that's sort of like a subconscious thing that even though you're not really consciously aware of it, your subconscious is. Well, the same thing happens if you were to say walk in a forest or somewhere where you were miles and miles and miles and miles away from any sort of air pollution. You could notice a significant difference from all of the natural vegetation without any air pollution nearby. And your house can become that. You can be like walking into a rainforest because we imagine the heating ventilation system and the air conditioning system of the whole house is run through your underground aquaponics. That's right. Coming standard with every package is a free add-on bonus that actually connects your existing HVAC system, whether it's new or old, it'll work. And you're circulating this air for your whole house. It's based around your garden in the second basement. And so you have an indoor garden that's part of this aquaponic system. Now, if you wanted to, you could get lots more fish and every week have salmon or I'm not sure what sort of fish, maybe not salmon, but whatever sorts of fish they use in those aquaponic systems come standard or whatever. You can also eat the fish if you want. They're going to go through generations. Some fish live a long time. Those fish might be sort of like pets, just like a fish you would have in a fish tank upstairs. You might not want to eat them because you love them so much, because they produce all this great vegetation in your basement. And this biome is based on bacteria, little living organisms from the plants. Plants are releasing little tiny pheromones, just like some. Well, they're not exactly pheromones, but they are similar in nature and function when it comes to the VSO, the little human organ that represents our sort of heightened smell ability. You can imagine your average smell ability. I've been able to develop a subconscious awareness into that VSO. It's called the O stands for olfactory signals. These are olfactory signals. Every smell that you register is actually a little molecule that presses itself into a membrane of a sponge that's called your olfactory system. And that's how you interpret smell. That's how you can tell the difference between a pine candle and a strawberry candle or something like that. You can tell the difference between if you're the poop check by smelling. Underground aquaponics, what's this all about? You have an iceberg of your brain, okay? And I don't want to get too big into the psychology principles, so go ahead and skip to the next video if you're not interested in any of the psychology stuff, because the psychology stuff is always at the end. Well, when it comes to the iceberg principle, 95 or 98 or maybe even 99% of everything that's going on in your brain at any given day time is subconscious. It's happening at this below the surface of the water. right? Having a mind like water is all on my website. Having a mind like water is being relaxed and productive. It's stress-free productivity. That's what having a mind like water actually is. The biome is huge. The biome is huge. That if you have dogs or cats, it changes the biome of your house. It changes those little microorganisms that exist on everything. You know, your kitchen table, your bathroom sink, stuff like that. Your whole house is different if you have pets. And likewise, your whole house biome would be different if you had the underground aquaponics. Get yours now. The psychology principle of underground aquaponics is that you also have an iceberg of your subconscious, and these ideograms are available online through Google. You type in Google for the iceberg of the mind through Sigmund Freud or whatever, and you can find these two principles next to each other, but the main one is the conscious and the subconscious. Now, the subconscious in some pictures is also called the unconscious. So you could say instead of having a conscious and a subconscious, you have a conscious and an unconscious. That's possible, but the idea is the same. Underground is, or underwater in this context, you just think of the Titanic. Uh, why did that ship sink? Because they only saw the little tip up top. They didn't see the huge monstrous thing underwater, but that was actually what tore the ship apart. That was what wrecked the ball. So your subconscious, if it's not working for you, I guarantee it's working against you. This is one of my principles. Take advantage of it. Your subconscious, if it's not working for you, it's working against you. Mine is working for me because I've done the programming. I call it Dukanan. It's my 10-8. Used to call it the dojo. Thought of myself sort of like doing this Tai Chi in a Tai Chi room where I'm doing Tai Chi. I'm reading through this Tai Chi book. I want to get some fancy clothes, like those Tai Chi clothes that they wear when they do Tai Chi, you know? The Tai Chi masters you can look up on the internet. I don't have any of those clothes yet. I'd like to. I think it'd be pretty cool to wear those clothes. Or like the Jedi clothes. I was watching Star Wars last night. They got these Jedi robes that they wear. I want to get something like that. Just start wearing it a couple times a week, just because. Make it part of my attire. Or an Ip Man. You ever seen Ip Man? Ip Man was a great one. I want to get one of those paddleboard things that he uses when he's doing his little Ip Man practice thing. You know, the little, it's like a little wooden pegged thing that he uses to do. I want to get something like that. I think that's really cool. I want to get something like that. I want to learn that. Get a couple books, read it, learn it in my new house. Have a separate room for that. I've told somebody I want to have like 4 or 5 rooms in my new house. This is why. I want to have one room that's dedicated to this sort of stuff. I think it's really cool. So, underground aquaponics, what is this all about? Well, the VSO is this little organ right between your nostrils, and there's 95% of all of those sensory organs being interpreted are not being registered consciously. They're being registered unconsciously or subconsciously, but not consciously. They're still there. They are still affecting you whether you're conscious or unconscious of it or not. Now, that being said, underground aquaponics is something that I think would dovetail into my life mission. So you can check it out. I've got another video about 18 minutes about a life mission deal. It had to do with carbon removal. If you remember, carbon removal is this topic that's pretty cool because in our atmosphere, well, I used to think it was pretty cool. It still is cool in a lot of ways. What they do is they create these little pellets, these little styrofoam pellets. They pull the current carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere using these pellets to help control the carbon level of the atmosphere. The irony is, and the sort of steel edge, is that if they get really good at it, then we might not necessarily need to eliminate fossil fuel burning in our communities. In my opinion, it still would be a lot better to get that ocean air, like if I lived in Hawaii or wanted to take a break for a month and go to Hawaii just because for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That'd be cool. I want that freedom. I want to have that freedom. Really gets me excited. If I can go around the world and do these crazy, amazing things. The interplanetary passport. So this was an idea I talked about in that other video, about 18 minutes or so. And the interplanetary passport is this idea of something that might need to exist if we go on to Mars. Supposedly, Elon Musk is going to help us get to Mars this decade. I mean, this century. I mean, they are this century. Yeah, it's not unheard of. It's somebody's got to do it, right? The interplanetary passport system is this idea that would combine world governments of Earth with whatever governments exist on Mars. We don't have to necessarily think that it would be only one government on Mars. Maybe everything on Earth would exist as it is, and Mars would just be the only place that the liquid democracy really takes true form. Who knows? Who knows? The idea is they flow together, but not sequentially. One of them definitely comes before the other, but they are similar related ideas that will eventually combine and fuse into one idea. But for now, they have to be separate ideas, just to be thought of clearly and separately. But later on, they'll be fused together in the interplanetary passport and liquid democracy. Like I said, there's a good chance I might write a book about this. One of the reasons that I thought about writing a book is because I'm pretty decent. I've already written a few ebooks and a few books in the past. One of them I still couldn't really decide on well, I was thinking about the different titles. Could be like entrepreneur psychotherapy or something like that. The big deal was perhaps poetic wisdom is something that I could write about, like sort of like modern day nursery rhymes for adults, something that's poetic and also wise, some sort of poetic wisdom, like Confucius or whatever. There's a lot of things. Technology Redefined was something that I also started writing on. I've got this interesting, it's sort of like blog length material, more than one of these blog length material that have to do, we were inspired directly by Elon Musk. So liquid democracy and the interplanetary passport are important, and not only are they important, but they're sexy. And once again, they're sexy because I'm sexy, and because of the fact I'm sexy, everything I do is sexy, and everything I talk about is sexy. Namely, the interplanetary passport. When we go to Mars, how will things be done? Because you imagine there's going to be regular stuff there. There's going to be restaurants, there's going to be salons, there's going to be all sorts of really neat things. They'll exist in a different way. They won't exist the same way they exist here. Certain elements will necessarily be different always. And the government should be receptive to that, flexible with that. The interplanetary passport. It's a neat idea. I mean, if you want to leave the country, then you've got to read my book when I write this book, because I'm going to write this book about interplanetary passport, and I'm going to talk about some of the ideas in the videos. I'm never going to publish anything in a blog, but these videos will be sort of like me talking through the ideas that I'm writing in the book, and then I'll just be like, stay tuned, stay on my email list. Next thing you know, you're on my email list. I'm sending you these emails, I got a book coming soon. So that's pretty cool. That I can use some of my Stonewheel money to blow myself up with influencer marketing, because that's what I'm doing. That's why you're on my channel, so thank you. Thank you for coming to my channel. I hope you like it. Go ahead and go to the next video.